Hey guys, it's Arlessa coming at you with another video. And in this video, I am going to be talking about emotional triggers. What are emotional triggers? How to better identify when you are being triggered, and also how to better understand, what triggers you and manage through those triggers, as well as having the communication with the people who are engaging with you on a daily basis, how to communicate your traumas to them, what triggers you with these past traumas and experiences, so that they can be more mindful about their interactions with you as well. Because after all, whenever we are triggered by other people or other situations or things that come up, most of the time, unless it's malicious intent, right? Malicious intent and purposely trying to trigger somebody is totally different than what I'm trying to talk about right now, which is people who don't know what triggers you and what doesn't, and how communicating this to them is extremely important for that specific relationship, right? To help people better understand you and you better understand them. And why communicating that is important and detrimental for any and all relationships that you're ever involved with. Communication will make or break any relationship that you have. So it's always good to learn how to be transparent with the people that are really close with you. So guys, let's begin. What is an emotional trigger? So an emotional trigger is essentially a trauma response to a certain stimuli that happens that maybe brings back the memories of something traumatic that happened, something that was very impactful. So it could be like something that could trigger you, could be like a smell, a texture, a color, a song, maybe somebody's tone of voice. It could be anything, right? Depending on what happened to you at that time. So when we experience something, let me give you an example. I'm going to give you what I consider a pretty common example. Not very cool to say that this happens a lot, but it does. And we live in a society where cheating is a thing. So let's use this as an example, because I know that most everybody can kind of put themselves in the situation to understand the comparison in explaining what a trauma response, how it is created, and how you're triggered and how to manage through, right? So let's say that you were in a relationship with somebody and infidelity happened, and the different emotions and ways that you handled that are very impactful on leading up to your future relationships. Okay, so how you felt in that situation, checking their phone, questioning them, the distrust, the different things that happen, that we experience, that put us into survival mode after something has happened to us that we want to protect ourselves from in that moment and in the future. So say that relationship is done with, but that trauma response and that experience still very much exists within you. So say you don't work through it, or maybe you do, maybe, whatever. You move into a new relationship down the road, and say you are trying to get a hold of this person and they don't answer. And something about that may trigger you, because maybe in the past, with your past experience, the person that was cheating on you maybe never answered their phone at the time. Okay, and so in the new relationship, when you're vulnerable and maybe you really need to speak with them, and at the time they don't answer, and for whatever reason it triggers that fear and that trauma response, and so then you start running all these scenarios through your head, you start questioning them, and then that creates tension within your present relationship that really had everything to do with maybe your trauma response in that moment. So it creates a problem, right? Because maybe you haven't communicated this in your your new present relationship. What has happened? Maybe y'all have talked about it, but you haven't talked about details. So it's very important to, like, when that happens, be like, hey, for whatever reason I was triggered in this moment. It's very important to be transparent. But this is what I'm talking about, an emotional trigger and how that can come up, right? So it could be anything that kind of triggers that emotion. And when that happens, and it's full on emotion, it's really hard for us to be able to control our emotions in the moment. And so we treat it as if we are in survival mode again. We have to protect ourselves again. We have to put defensive mode up. We have to put our guards up. We have to make sure that this doesn't happen again. Because right now, what you're doing is you are relating that present experience to the past. And even though your mind knows that you're going back there, your body feels like you're experiencing it in real time. And therefore, you start to feel that anxiety. Your temperature starts to rise. Maybe you start to get flushed, right? You start to sweat. Maybe your heartbeat starts to race. Different things, those are telltale signs that you're also being triggered and that your body is starting to have that emotional reaction to whatever it is that's happening. Okay? So, like I said, textures, voices, tones, you will know what is tailored to your own specific trauma. Okay, so how can we be aware when we're actually being triggered and it's not actually happening to us and it's our past trauma responding to the present? How do we know? So a few things that we do know about this is what I explained a little bit ago about the different stimuli with your body, like your temperature rising, you're starting to get, anxious. Maybe you're starting to get flushed, right? You have all these different emotions. In that moment, when it's just this onslaught of emotion, trying to calm yourself and self-soothe and tell yourself, okay, how can I get a better understanding about why I'm feeling this way? How can I be more aware that what I am feeling is coming from something that I haven't worked through? And so you start to be self-aware when you start to feel these physical sensations happen. And then it's giving you points. It's saying, hey, this is starting to happen. Your anxiety starts to rise. Okay, take a look at it. In this moment, do I have a reason to react in this way? Start to in your mind, you have to kind of rationalize yourself when you're going through your triggers because it's very emotional, it's very high octane, and it feels very real again. And so we have to bring that in and say, is there a reason for me to be feeling this way? Did something happen to me in this moment to make me feel unsafe? If it did, why did it? And we have to kind of look at our present situation and compare it to the past and see where there is likeness or where there isn't. And understanding how to move through this is really important, and what triggers you is really important to know, because this way you can communicate to the people that you know, hey, through my experience, I understand that when maybe this is said, or maybe this happens, or this is, whenever this aspect is put into our situation, I feel myself go back into the past and I feel myself get triggered and it makes me uncomfortable. So can we find another way of approaching me instead of this way while I work through understanding why I react that way better? Right? It's talking to people and allowing them to understand where you're coming from, why you're coming from that way, and giving them the opportunity with knowing this to treat you accordingly, and allow that very fair situation and offering of allowing them to show up for you in the natural way that they will, knowing things that are important and meaningful and things that hurt you and don't. You have to allow people the opportunity to understand what does and doesn't hurt you, because if they don't know, you can't really blame them for doing it unless it's malicious intent, right? So a lot of this, I'm not saying there is malicious intent. People know how to trigger you and set you off. So I'm not talking about this. This should be identifiable. And if it's not, then we'll do another video about this. But when people don't know. So it's important not to let your past traumas dictate what happens in your present relationships and your present situationships and whatever it is, because we are letting the past hold us back, but we're also treating people like our past, right? And we're reflecting onto them. So emotional triggers are very valid. They need to be looked at. Don't treat them like they're stupid or, oh, I shouldn't be acting this way or shouldn't be feeling this way. Understanding that you're being triggered in the moment, where it comes from, and how to communicate is really imperative, guys. So, really quick, because my brain, I get sidetracked. I'm in the parking lot and like a lot of cars pass, and my eyes, I'm sure you can see all my videos, I'm always looking around and things like that, trying to be aware. Anyways, so emotional triggers are things that are triggered from our trauma responses. Okay, and it could be anything, any kind of stimuli that triggers that emotion and triggers that memory, and therefore triggers that emotion. And understanding our triggers and the physical stimuli when triggers start to happen, so that we can better manage our triggers in that moment and better communicate to the people that are there with us in the moment on what's happening, and then how to move you know, together in the future and moving forward and understanding each other, guys. So I hope this little bit helped. I didn't want to go too deep into it. Just kind of wanted to make a few little points so that you can start, you know, paying more attention to your mind, body, and soul, right? It's important to bring all three of those together. So if we're reacting, if our mind is taking our emotions somewhere, it's important to kind of center ourselves and find out where and try to make that connection and then communicate that to other people as we move forward. So thanks for watching my video, guys. It was really super quick. A lot of cool things happening in 2023. If you have anything you want me to talk about or you're interested in getting discussion going, mention it in the comments, guys. And my phone just did the low battery thing, so I don't know what just happened on the video, but it's still recording. So thanks for watching my video, guys. I appreciate you guys, and have a good weekend.